Hi, my fellow 406s and everyone else who's taking a look at my blog. I'm Vicky White, and today I'm going to share a little bit of information with you about minority groups during the American Revolutionary period. So, the American Revolution is mostly thought of as a war, but it's actually so much more than that. It was the war where American people showed their character, determination, and grit, and it was the war that created the independent nation of the United States of America. So first, a little background, because I know some of you, like myself, did not grow up in the United States. Before 1776, America was a set of 13 British colonies on the eastern side of North America. The colonists who lived here saw themselves as proud British citizens, and they were happy to live under the Crown. To be British was to be free. That was until the end of the 7 Years' War against the Indians for the Ohio River Valley. After the 7 Years' War, the British were in large amounts of debt and believed that the Americans should help pay that debt. The colonists disagreed, as they claimed it was the right of Englishmen to be taxed only with their full consent. In October of 1763, the king released the proclamation, which stated that no American colonists could settle past an imaginary line drawn along the Appalachian Mountains. In April of the following year, Parliament placed an indirect tax on the colonists called the Sugar Act, which was designed to raise revenue to pay back the national debt. It taxed sugar, coffee, and other imports. Then the Currency Act was introduced, where the British only allowed the use of the British pound and prohibited the use of any colonial money. In March of 1765, the British Parliament imposed the Stamp Act, where basically anything printed for or in the American colonies was taxed. That same year, Parliament implemented the Townshend Revenue Act, which was another import tax on items such as tea, paint, and paper that was being sold in the colonies. By this stage, the Americans were feeling a little like second-class citizens, which was ironic because the British didn't really see them as citizens at all. The way the Americans saw themselves were as citizens, and how dare they be taxed without representation. But the British at home in England simply saw them as a colonial income. Very few saw an issue with the colonists being treated like second-class citizens. Furthermore, they believed that the colonies did have representation, in a virtual means anyway. So the last straw for the Americans was the Tea Act of May 1773, where the British Parliament declared that the colonists could only buy tea from the British East India Tea Company, which were going broke. Colonists were upset that this undercut their own sales and required them to pay taxes that were required by the Townshend Acts. In response to this, in December of that year, some colonists, who were part of a group called the Sons of Liberty, boarded the British East India Tea Company ships that was docked in Boston Harbor and dumped all of the tea into the harbor. We know this as the Boston Tea Party. As you could guess, the British didn't appreciate this, and as punishment, they closed the port of Boston, Massachusetts, and dissolved all government offices that were not run for the king. These were a series of intolerable acts, which inevitably led to the First Continental Congress in September of 1774. The Americans moved to declaring independence after this long social and political battle with the king and the British Parliament. On the 2nd of July in 1776, Congress began to draft a Declaration of Independence with Thomas Jefferson at the pen. The Declaration stated that their grievances against the king, the British Parliaments, and declared the American colonists free and independent of British rule from that day forward. So I'm going to read directly from the Declaration of Independence. That these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally resolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may have right to do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The first shots were fired at the Battle of Lexington and Concord, but officially the American Revolution had already begun. Check out my second vlog for some information on minorities during this period.